All right, deep divers, welcome back. Ready to jump into some of the latest and greatest in tech and social media.
Always.
Well, we've got a whole stack of articles hot off the press from social media today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, all published yesterday, October 30th, 2024. And they're chock full of insights into how the different platforms are performing, what new features they're rolling out, and what it all means for the ever-evolving creator economy.
So, I'm ready to dive in.
Let's do it. I think a perfect example of just how much things are changing is what's happening with, well, formerly Twitter.
Oh, yeah. X.
X, exactly. Remember when that whole rebranding happened? But it looks like that move might not be playing out so well over in the European Union.
Interesting.
Yeah. One article highlights that X has lost a pretty sizable chunk of its EU users since August 2023.
Really? How much of it? The full 6%. Like
Uh,
7 million users gone.
Wow. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what's driving that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the article does point to a few potential factors.
Yeah.
Elon Musk has made some pretty big changes since he took over.
And they also point out that X has actually almost cut their moderation staff in half over the past year.
Wow, really? Cutting staff?
Yeah, pretty drastic reduction. So it makes you wonder, are they relying more on automated systems like their community notes thing?
I mean, Community Notes, that whole crowdsourced fact-checking system, it's a good idea in theory, but I've heard some pretty mixed reviews about its effectiveness.
Yeah, it's not without its critics, that's for sure.
Yeah. A lot of people argue it's too easy to manipulate, and that it hasn't really made a dent in tackling misinformation.
So if X is losing users and its moderation systems are kind of, under scrutiny, what does all this mean for the creators who are relying on the platform to connect with their audience?
Right. It's a big question and definitely something creators should be thinking about. If X's user base keeps shrinking, it's going to impact their reach and engagement. I mean, who knows? Maybe this is a chance for some other platforms to step up and grab those creators and their audiences.
That's a good point. Speaking of other platforms, what about Threads? Meta's answer to, well, X. It looks like it's gaining some serious traction.
Yeah. How so?
It's sitting at a pretty impressive 275 million monthly active users right now. That's a huge jump from just a couple of months ago, back in August.
That's a massive increase.
And it doesn't look like that growth is slowing down anytime soon. Apparently, they're adding something like 1 million users every single day.
Whoa! 1 million users a day. That's incredible growth.
Yeah, it seems like folks who are looking for that Twitter-like experience, maybe just without some of the, shall we say, drama, are finding a home on Threads.
Right, right. So maybe that's all part of Meta's strategy, you think?
I mean, it's interesting because Mark Zuckerberg has said he doesn't expect Threads to actually generate any revenue until 2025.
Really?
Yeah, so it's like they're laser focused on just building up that massive user base for now.
Smart. Play the long game. Especially when you consider how much reach Meta already has.
Oh, for sure. I mean, did you know that their apps are used by almost 40% of the entire planet every single day?
40% every day.
Yeah, that's like over 3 billion people. More than the populations of China and the U.S. combined.
That's just mind-boggling.
And it looks like that reach is translating into some serious cash. Meta just posted a really strong revenue result for Q3.
How much?
$40.59 billion.
Wow.
Yeah. But here's where things get really interesting. While their core advertising business is booming, they're also pouring billions into VR and AI.
Right.
Even though those ventures are actually losing money right now.
So they're playing the long game on multiple fronts. Interesting. It makes you wonder, what does that future they're building even look like?
Right. Will we all be hanging out in the metaverse, having meetings with our avatars and chatting with AI bots?
It's a wild thought, isn't it?
It is. But you know what? I think we've got plenty more to unpack in this deep dive, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the rise of LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. You mean beyond just job hunting?
Exactly. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
LinkedIn, huh? Yeah, it's interesting to see what they're doing, trying to be more than just a place to polish your resume.
Right. It seems like they're really trying to play up this idea of record engagement.
Right.
But one of the articles points out that unlike platforms like X or Threads, LinkedIn doesn't actually share their active user numbers.
That's a bit suspicious, isn't it?
It makes you wonder what they're really measuring.
Right. What does engagement even mean in their world? Are people actually spending more time on LinkedIn, or are they just clicking on more job postings because, well, the economy?
Yeah, that's a good point. The job market is definitely a factor. But regardless of how they're measuring it, LinkedIn is definitely making moves to become more than just a digital resume. They're adding a new feature, a lead generation objective for boosted posts.
Interesting. So they're really trying to attract businesses and creators by giving them tools to actually like generate leads and grow their audience, not just connect with people, but actually get some business going.
Exactly. Seems like everyone's trying to tap into that creator economy.
Absolutely. But speaking of platforms vying for creator attention, what about the big kahuna, YouTube?
YouTube, the OG video platform. It's amazing how we keep innovating and staying ahead of the curve, especially with YouTube Shorts. Remember we were talking about how huge short-form video is these days?
Oh yeah, it's everywhere.
Well, YouTube Shorts are pulling in a mind-blowing 70 billion views every single day.
70 billion. That's insane.
And YouTube is definitely not sleeping on this trend. They're making it easier to track Shorts performance right there in YouTube Studio. And they're rolling out even more AI-powered tools, like AI-generated content summaries, and even testing an AI chatbot right there in Studio.
Wow, AI is everywhere these days, isn't it? From writing tools to chatbots, it's changing the game. Makes you wonder what it means for the future of content creation.
I know, it's a lot to think about. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's bring it back to something we touched on earlier. Misinformation.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. We talked about X's community notes, but this issue goes way beyond any single platform.
Right. It's something we all have to grapple with in the digital age. How do we separate truth from fiction when there's so much information flying around?
It can feel overwhelming, for sure, but I think it starts with being a critical thinker. Don't just believe everything you see online. Question your sources, look for evidence, and be willing to consider different perspectives.
And don't be afraid to speak up when you see something that seems off. We all have a responsibility to challenge misinformation and help create a more informed online environment.
Absolutely. It's on all of us to do our part. And I think that brings us back to the importance of staying informed. The more we understand about how these platforms work, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the digital landscape and make informed decisions.
So, stay tuned, deep divers. We're going to wrap up this deep dive by exploring some key takeaways and looking ahead at what the future might hold for tech, social media, and all of us. We've explored a lot in this deep dive, haven't we? Platform changes, the creator economy, AI, misinformation. What are some of the biggest things that have stuck with you?
It really highlights just how quickly things are changing in the digital world. Platforms that were dominant just a few years ago are now facing serious challenges, and new players are emerging all the time. It's a reminder that we can't just sit still. We have to stay informed, adapt, and be willing to embrace change.
I like that, embracing change. It's like riding a wave. If you don't adjust to the currents, you're going to wipe out. So what would you say are some of the most important things for our listeners to keep an eye on as they're navigating this ever-changing digital landscape?
The rise of the creator economy is definitely a big one. We've seen how creators are gaining more and more influence across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, even LinkedIn.
It's fascinating, isn't it? The power is shifting, and creators are becoming these central figures in how we connect, consume information, and even do business online.
And the platforms are definitely taking notice. They're constantly rolling out new features and tools to attract and empower creators. It's a smart move because ultimately, creators are the ones driving engagement and building communities.
So true. And as a listener, you have the power to choose which creators you support, which communities you join. You get to shape your online experience.
Absolutely. It's not just about passively consuming content anymore. You have a voice, you have agency,
Yeah.
and you can use that to create the kind of digital world you want to be a part of.
And with that agency, I think, comes a certain level of responsibility. We've talked a lot about misinformation today, and that's a challenge that requires all of us to be more aware, more critical, more engaged.
Right. We can't just blindly accept everything we see online. We have to question our sources, check for bias, look for evidence.
And be willing to have those tough conversations. If you see something that seems off, don't be afraid to speak up, to challenge it. We can't just sit back and hope someone else will fix the problem. It's on all of us to create a more informed and responsible online environment.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's about being informed, being engaged, and ultimately being an active participant in shaping the digital world we want to live in.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. But the conversation doesn't end here.
That's right. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of tech and social media.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. And until next time, stay curious and stay informed.